Hello and welcome to Romance Isn't Dead, episode 11. See ya later. No kidding. We're actually going to be talking about YA romance today. And, Ray, how are you doing?
Yeah. Cold. I made the mistake of thinking it was warmer than it actually is.
Oh, should I not tell you it's 70 degrees here?
No.
Oh, I won't then.
You just did.
Well, it's not like it's going to be 80 or anything this afternoon.
Yeah, I don't like the look on your face right now.
That having been said, it's going to be very, very ugly here today. Overcast, rainy, and cloudy. So a lot like your weather, only hotter.
My heart bleeds.
I know. But I'll also get things like hurricanes. So it all evens out, right? Ray's like, no, I can take it. I'd handle the occasional hurricane. Okay. So, all right, we're going to be talking about young adult today, and we're actually, I think, going to try to concentrate on the books. But a lot of these books have been made into movies, right, Ray?
I think actually all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Looking down the list that I've got written, I think every single one of them has had at least one movie.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. I didn't realize that a couple of them did, so that's interesting. But we do have something before we get started. Ray, what is it? What are we happy about?
Monday morning, I woke up to a message in Hangouts from Sally, and then I checked my Twitter, and it was like, Jill Mansell actually listened to our podcast last week and sent us a thank you. So you might have seen that on our Twitter feed. I had to admit that it started off my week in a really good way because it didn't end in a good one. So that's our momentary squee. And it really was. I think my cat thought I was going insane.
Well, it's Darcy, you know.
Yeah, I know.
Darcy's gonna Darcy.
Yeah, she bit me last week, so this was kind of payback.
Yeah, like I said, Darcy's gonna Darcy. All right, it really is cool. I was like, I saw that first, which is unusual because I normally don't see anything before Ray does, and I was like, dude. And so I immediately had to go back and make sure that I had not said anything overly critical. And I don't think I did, but...
I think I actually highlighted one of the novels of hers that I really didn't like as well. In fact, when we were going through and we were talking about, definitely try one of her books, and then I said, but don't try Solo. So,
no.
And I think that was actually her first novel, and it is. I love all her others, but that is one I will never reread.
Okay, but I think it's awesome though. It's really cool, and it was startling. Very startling. But that's awesome though. I'm still kind of excited about that. All right, so back to YA. Let's see. First of all, just as a bullet point, the hero and or the heroine in YA tends to be a young adult. And when we're talking young adult, we're talking teen. I think generally most of these are late teens. Would you say that's fair?
Would you say normally sort of when they're American, they're normally junior year of high school? Is that 16?
I'd say that 15 to 17-ish, 18-ish is probably where you can expect most YA. That having been said, Harry Potter is a bit of a difference here because it starts when he's 11, but it does go through to when he's 17, 18 years old. So,
and it also starts, it's unlike all the others, it's actually based in the UK education system.
Yes.
And we don't have high school in the traditional way. We start secondary school at 11.
Okay.
And we call that high school. So
that would make it make sense, right? That makes sense.
I think so.
Yeah, so that's one bullet point. Ray, you want to take the next one?
Okay. They are not only now written to appeal to teenagers and children in general. I mean, Harry Potter even released special covers so people could read them on their commute on the way to work. I don't know if they did the same in the States, but they definitely rejigged the covers so they weren't so illustrated. They were an image that was specific to the theme of the book. Mm-hmm. And they were a bestseller for adults and children alike. And it was the first time that had really happened.
Right. Well, I will say this about the Harry Potter covers. I know that we only got the one American variant, so the adults that were reading them had to be loud and proud about the fact that they were reading Harry Potter. And that's totally fine with me. But I do remember sort of squeeing over the adult covers. I thought that they were really cool looking and wishing that I had had that as an option for me, not because I was embarrassed to be reading Harry Potter, but because I just thought those covers were gorgeous.
They were very, very dark, the
Mm-hmm.
covers, with a lot of focus on blacks, greys, and greens.
Mm-hmm.
But they looked, to me, they looked very much like the thrillers and psychological thrillers and things that are released over here, the crime novels and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And they targeted that particular cover at adults,
Mm-hmm.
and they marketed them with adult pricing.
Interesting. Interesting. So there's always the notion, at least with Harry Potter, that it's not just going to be kids reading this.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's an important thing, and I think that publishers were getting that those books spoke to a larger dynamic than just 11 to 12-year-old kids, and that's hugely important. Okay, so anything else that we want to mention about that?
I think that it's a big change. When we were both specifically aged in the YA market, there wasn't so much, especially romance, that was marketed at both adults and teens alike. There wasn't the range. I mean, I know that we were talking about this yesterday, and I'd done a search because I knew that we had Sweet Valley High and the R.L. Stein Goosebumps books and things. And then there was a series of books. There were 235 books in this series called Sweet Dreams. And they were they mostly had young girls smiling, holding a tennis racket, wearing really lame 80s clothing. Courtney Cox was on the cover of one. I saw that cover yesterday and thought, oh dear God, what the heck. But they were targeted at teenage girls. They were a romance. The girl finds the guy of her dreams. She has multiple boys chasing after her. But they had really odd titles. I think there was one that was called Tender Loving Care. There was one I remember so clearly called Lights, Camera, Love. I looked at the cover yesterday. It was like, I had that book. I remembered the hideous brown dress with the very, very fluffed up cream lace collar that the girl was wearing, and the 80s hair. I will actually post the image of that in my blog.
Wow.
They were all very American.
Very
American. They were an American series.
I don't remember it at all, Ray.
They actually spawned, Francine Pascal got her start writing for Sweet Dreams, and it spawned the start of Sweet Valley High.
See, now I remember Sweet Valley High, but Sweet Dreams, I don't know that I ever read those. I do know that I read some of Sweet Valley Highs, though. I remember really liking Sweet Valley High.
I had about 70 Sweet Valley High books, and I had probably 130 Sweet Dreams. There were 233, I think, plus a couple of series. I might even have one somewhere in a box. But there were a lot of them. They were released on a monthly basis, and in the summer they had specials that were extra thick with a couple of novels by the same author. And that was the YA novel of the 80s. And then the 90s, and it changed completely.
It did indeed. I was telling you that I remembered reading Harlequin had like a Young Love series or something like that. And
I did a bit of research yesterday, and they were actually called Harlequin First Love.
Okay. Yes. I remember reading those and liking those, and it was all about first boyfriends. And I remember one, I could not tell you the title of it to save my life, but I read it, I must have read it a million times. And I think part of it was that I kind of related to this heroine, and it's not a message that I would want my daughter to receive today.
No, I think that was the point with those books. So they were very much, oh, a girl has to have a boyfriend. A girl is not complete without a boyfriend. And that was the message we got in the 80s.
And see, this one, though, would really not age well, because I remember this one as the girl was relatively new to her high school, and she was a little overweight, and mom was always trying to get her to lose weight. And of course, that was why she didn't have a boyfriend, because she was a little pudgy. And then she gets involved at school and starts planning things, and she sort of unintentionally loses weight. And it's the whole, the eye roll. I saw that eye roll. And so she helps plan the prom, and now she's more popular with her classmates. And then her mom buys her a dress, but the dress is too big. And oh my God, can you believe the dress is too big? And they have to rush to the store and get her a new dress. And yeah, this is not a message.
So not a message for us now.
That is not a message that I would want to send to my daughters.
But that was the message in the 80s. That was the thing. That was the message in the 80s. It was that you had to be skinny, you had to be popular, you also had to be a bit stupid.
Well, no, she wasn't stupid. She wasn't, unless you count not knowing that your clothes are getting too big, stupid. I didn't mean to actually say that out loud, but yeah, that was the thing. It was like, I just would not, to me, that's a very damaging message to send to young girls. But in the age of the 80s, and when I read it, it was the 80s. I know it was the 80s, because I wasn't yet in high school when I read that one. But that was the message that came across, that even if you don't have a boyfriend, you need to, really, you have to look a certain way and be a certain way. And I just...
Isn't that the message that is given by Cher to Kai in Clueless? That she has to look a certain way, so they give her that makeover, and all of a sudden she's popular with the boys, and they're finding her the ideal boyfriend. And oh my God, I can't believe Paul Rudd is 50, but that's another matter entirely.
I can't.
No, he turned 50 this week, and it's like, oh my God, he hasn't changed at all since he was in Clueless. But anyway, it's that kind of message, is you have to fit in. There was none of the it's important to be different, or not important to be different, but it doesn't matter if you're different, because no matter who you are, people will like you for who you are, which is kind of the message that a lot of the books that are published now seem to pass on, whereas the books that we read that were in a way vital to our development into young adults were very much of the, oh, well, you have to be the same as everybody else.
Yeah,
I can remember
they very
telling
much,
you I spoke too posh.
They seem to value conformity over individuality, definitely. And it's not that they didn't have a, be yourself message, because some of them did have a be yourself message.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was just really like, if the message that as an adult I remember from that book was, oh, you need to be thin and you'll be happier, that's a problem. And definitely not a book that I would hand to my daughter or any of my daughters, because I have several, 3. It's not a book I would hand to any of my 3 children, my 3 daughters, and say, oh, you should read this book. It's not what I'm going to do. So I think it's changed a lot. And particularly with Harry Potter, first of all, this is not a novel that's aimed at girls at all. No. Right. This is a novel that was aimed at, I think, all kids, but the hero, if the hero is a boy, and it's just different. And so it appealed to a lot of kids that maybe had been lost to reading. I don't know.
Yeah, it came out at the same kind of time, I think, as the Alex Rider series, which is about a 14-year-old boy who's a spy.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It was almost like they were trying to get more boys into reading, especially over here. I know that there was a definite disparity between the number of boys and the number of girls who were getting good grades in their exams at that point, and they were trying to, I think, push far more to encourage boys to get involved. And I think that may have triggered some of its success.
Interesting. I'm not sure. I can't really totally speak to that, but I'm not familiar with that series at all. So, unfortunately. Okay, well, the other thing that I think is worth noting here is the YA that we're talking about today, really, it's all series, right? We've got Harry Potter, and there were several romantic couples within the Harry Potter series. And of course, that doesn't pop up until later in the series when they are, when they are teens, right? When they get to be about 14, that's when she starts.
Goblet of Fire, really, I think.
Yeah, that's when they start pulling in some of the romance stuff. I'm going to mention Twilight. I know this is not Ray's favorite. I don't really have
not
a
at all.
visceral reaction to Twilight. It's not my particular jam, but I know people who loved it. And it was, I think, it was, okay, so there are two different themes that I look at when I look at these. Either you have magic or you have vampire or dystopian, right? The only one that's not is the Princess Diaries. And even then, there's this element of fantasy about it, right? And
I guess, definitely. A girl suddenly discovers that she's a princess.
Right. So there's still fantasy element there, but these are definitely not girl goes to high school, meets a boyfriend, and he's, a football player or whatever. These are not them. These are very different than that.
No, these are girl goes to high school is apparently a magnet for vampires and falls in love with a vampire and has a relationship with a werewolf, and then the whole thing just gives me the shivers, because I think the message it's giving is very, very damaging, really. But that's my personal feeling.
Yeah, I read, I'll be perfectly honest, I read the first Twilight book and I read the last Twilight book. I did not read the intervening ones, and I don't.
You didn't really miss anything.
No, I mean there are people out there who love Twilight, so I don't want to denigrate their love for that series. I mean, it's not, and I don't think you're meaning to denigrate their love for the series either.
Oh no, I'm not. I think it's, as I said, we've said so many times before, it is a very personal thing, right? Whether you like a book or you don't like a book. I probably like hundreds of books that other people go, what?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
I have no doubt of that at all.
Yeah, and I mean, and there are other people who probably really enjoy books written in first person present tense, and that makes me crazy. So,
Exactly.
I can't. Okay, so there are a couple of romantic couples in there, and the obvious one, Bella and Edward, and then eventually Renesmee and Jacob. And Jacob was the initial another point of the love triangle between Bella and Edward and Jacob, and so it spawned the sort of Team Edward, Team Jacob things. And in the end, spoilers for Twilight, I suppose, but I think the spoiler limit is up on that.
I think the statute of limitations has expired.
Yeah. Bella has Edward's child. Obviously, they wind up together, and they wind
up married when they're 18, just out of school, no college, no further ambitions, right out of school. They get married, and she gets pregnant on their honeymoon.
Okay, and so
to a vampire who's genetically dead.
Renesmee eventually grows up to marry Jacob. Is that correct? Okay, so...
Well, I don't think they go that far, but they discover that they have this soulmate
kind of connection
type thing.
Right.
And then they justify the bond that Jacob felt with Bella by saying it was because he knew that she was. I don't know. I actually have to admit that my brain switched off.
According to what one of my former students said, the fact that she was the mother of his future, well, I guess mate is the only way to put it, is the reason that they, that he was so, I guess, into her and wanted to protect her so much. And I think they called it imprinting. I'm not really sure exactly how it all works. But, the wolf inside him wouldn't allow him to hurt her or make her do anything before she was old enough to be consensual and all that stuff. So, I'm just going to accept that as read, and that's how that works. I don't exactly know, because, as I said, I was not a faithful reader of the Twilight series. So, and I didn't see all the movies either. I mean, it just wasn't really it wasn't my cup of tea, and so I just didn't go there. The next one, Divergent.
I haven't read at all.
I read Divergent. I read the first 3, and then I did not see the movies, and I'll tell you why. The couple in Divergent is Tris and Four. I liked Tris and Four. As a dystopian world, I thought it was super interesting. I really enjoyed the first Divergent book. The second Divergent book was okay, and I threw the third Divergent book across the room. For me to throw a book across a room, you have to understand, this was not me. No. It really obviously angered me, and you know what? It's not my work. The author can do whatever she wants or he wants. It's their work, their property. But man, oh my gosh. And that, to me, with the people that I know, that was almost a universal response. Like, they were like, first 2 are great, third one, don't read it. First 2 are great, third one, don't even read it. And after I read the third one, I looked at one of my students and I said, first 2, they're good. Stop reading. Trust me, stop reading. Another teacher looked at her and said, first 2 are good. Don't read the third one. She did it anyway. You should listen to your teachers. That's all I'm saying. You should listen to your teachers. Because she came back and she was like, y'all were right. It was terrible. Told you so. Because I'm not one of these teachers who's really nice, but I'm actually like, told ya.
Any opportunity.
Yeah.
Any opportunity.
I like to be right. So
Who doesn't?
I just can't with that. But, and I'm figuring that the author is not going to listen to this podcast, so I'm not going to. But man, I did. But the romance element of Tris and Four, I actually liked them together. I did. But that ending just killed it for me. Just killed it. But I totally shipped them as I was reading it. I was like, oh yeah, this is great. And then it wasn't great.
Then it went wrong.
It wasn't. It was great until it wasn't, if that makes sense. So
yeah.
All right, so Mortal Instruments. I've never read Mortal Instruments, and I've never seen the movie.
Nope. I can honestly say neither have I. The only reason this is on the list is because the romance is a core part of the story. So anyone who's read them, let us know what you thought about the romance. It'll be interesting to hear. Mm-hmm. I know that they made a movie about that was called The Mortal Instruments or City of Bones or something. And then they've made a series called Shadowhunters, which ends this year, I believe. I read Cassie Clare when she was a fan fiction author, and she started off in Harry Potter, but I haven't read anything of her since. So we cannot judge on that. We just want to let you know that there is a series out there. And in fact, I think it's quite a long series now. Mm-hmm. And that is a Supernatural. So far we've covered Supernatural, Dystopian, Supernatural, I think.
Yes. I think Mortal Instruments is also kind of dystopian at the same time.
Sort of, but sort of not. I think it's an urban fantasy.
Okay, gotcha. Fair enough. Okay, and then we move back to the world of Greek mythology with...
We do indeed.
Percy Jackson.
Percy Jackson.
Sorry.
Percy Jackson's a different one because there were 2 movies made. And in the movies, the characters are older. They're in their mid-teens. Whereas in the books, Percy starts off much younger. I believe he's 11. Mm-hmm. It's been quite a while since I read the books, but the core focus is friendship. So you've got Annabeth, who is the daughter of Athena, and Percy, who is a daughter. Wow, he's changed sex. He's a son.
We're inclusive. We're inclusive. No judgment. No judgment.
No. He's a son of Triton or Poseidon.
Yes.
Of course, Rick Riordan also wrote a Roman version of this series.
Yes.
So he turned to the Roman pantheon so that would have been Triton and still the Titans and Jupiter and Minerva instead of Athena. You can't tell I did anything to do with mythology at college at all. And I believe he's now writing a series that is about the Olympians and focusing on separate characters within the Percy Jackson series, because I think the latest one is about Annabeth.
Yeah, I've had to buy some of those for my daughter. She adored the Percy Jackson books. She's kind of gotten out of reading, which is horrifying to me, but she's still doing, like, she's drawing more now, so I suppose that's okay. She's not reading.
Your face didn't look very impressed at that one.
Mm-hmm. So anyway.
But
she loved it. And she's 10. She's an old 10. She's almost 11 now, but she's old for her age. But last summer when she had just turned 10, she devoured these books, like whole chunks.
They were a quick read. I have to say that I found them a quick read, and I read the first one after I'd seen the first film, because I take my sister's kids to the cinema, or I used to take my sister's children to the cinema, and I took them to see the first Percy Jackson film, and I read the books afterwards. So my nephew had read them, and I wanted to have something to talk to him about, because he was quite a big reader. He's not quite so much at the moment because he's doing exams, but we had something to talk about, and it was the Percy Jackson books. He, obviously being a teenage boy, wasn't so interested in the romance element of them, but there is a subtle romance. It's not massively in your face. It's a building relationship, building friendships, which is, I suppose, what a book aimed at teenage boys is about. It's building relationships rather than all out and out. I mean, how many teenage boys, when they're sort of 12, 13, are interested in reading about kissing?
You're not wrong. I'm not disagreeing with you. I mean, Rick Riordan knows his audience, right? And it's...
Yeah, exactly.
And that's arguably what he should do. All right, so do we want to move along? This next one, I have not read these at all either. Have you?
You've seen the films though, right?
Yes, I have indeed.
Yeah. The Princess Diaries series by Meg Cabot. Mm-hmm. She also writes adult chick lit. Mm-hmm. So along a similar vein to Jill Mansell from last week. But the story in the films is very different to the story in the books. They move along a lot quicker. The books don't move along quite as quickly as the film, but the films obviously are compressed several different elements into one film. Mm-hmm. She ends up with Michael.
Yeah.
Spoiler! Massive spoiler. In the books, she ends up with Michael. However, from what I remember from when the films came out, the actor who played Michael in the films, in the first film, decided that he was leaving acting and he went to focus on his music career. So they had to find another element. So, of course, in comes Callum Blue and Chris Pine. And the story changes completely. And apparently they are now making a third film. But in the books, there is a romance between Mia and her best friend's brother, Michael, which slowly builds to the point where they actually end up married at the end of the series. I think there's 7 books. I stopped reading at about book 5. I just know that, but the story is very, very different to all the others that we've talked about. It's almost a fairy tale, because it's a girl discovers that her father, who she has never met but used to send her presents, was actually a king of a far-off land called Genovia, and she was the last royal in line for the throne in that particular family, and she had to become a princess and take on all the responsibilities that entailed. So it is a fairy tale, really.
It's 100% a fairy tale, and I totally approve of fairy tales, as we know.
Yep. We discussed those a couple of weeks ago.
Fairy tales are my jam.
That's the sort of fairy tale I think that the story wouldn't have been out of place if it had been released in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is something, I mean, Mia is very independent. She's very strong-willed. She's very intelligent. She knows who she is, and she's happy with who she is. And initially, she has to adjust to this realization that she has huge responsibilities that she wasn't aware of. And she gets through them, and she builds relationships, and she maintains relationships. All the while, her life is going through some massive adjustments. So she's the kind of princess that would be a self-rescuer rather than a damsel in distress, definitely.
Gotcha.
I think she was one of Disney's first self-rescuing princesses.
You know, I haven't really thought about that, so I am not going to argue the point. I could agree with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the Princess Diaries were Disney films when they were made into films. They were Disney with Julie Andrews and Anne Hathaway, and she was a self-rescuing princess, stubborn as anything, and fits into the YA category because she is only 16 when she discovers that she is a princess.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, and then the final one, I think on our list, we did a blog post about this, right?
We did. Well, yes, you did.
Well, I wrote it, but that doesn't mean that we didn't do it.
That is true.
The Mighty Hunger Games. Whew.
Oh, where do we start?
Another dystopia.
Oh, yeah.
This one has elements of a love triangle with Katniss, the heroine, Peeta, and Gale. And she, of course, winds up with Peeta, who she goes through all the trauma with. Gale is her best friend from childhood, and there's kind of an enemies to allies to lovers thing going on with Peeta, which, of course, I enjoy. And
but he's also had a massive crush on her forever.
Right, but they're still enemies because they're supposed to kill each other. So I get it. I know. You're right. He has a massive crush on her. And as you know, boys who have massive crushes often do really nasty things to girls that they have massive crushes on. Except Peeta saved her life, and that actually made her mad because Katniss is an angry kind of character. Oh,
yeah, she's incredibly angry.
You can't really blame her. I'd be kind of pissed off too. But Gale is equally angry, and I think that's the thing that they get to, that Katniss actually says that fire that's inside her and that fire that's inside Gale, it's just too much together. They're too much together.
Yeah, but
And
there's also the element of Gail has a lot to do with her younger sister's death.
oh yes, of
And I don't think
course.
anybody could forgive that.
No, well, no, not. Well, you could in fiction, right? Because it's fiction, but in real life, that would be something you couldn't forgive. But Peeta's temperament is much calmer, and they sort of work together. They work together, and his
Even though he tries to kill her when he's brainwashed.
again with the enemies to lovers thing, man.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I mean, she goes to rescue him because she's like, I can't be without him. She goes to rescue him. He's lost a limb that you don't see in the movies,
No,
by
of
the
course
way.
not.
Read the books. And he tries to kill her because he's been brainwashed. I mean, the
Yes.
whole society, this is very much a message of society is your enemy. In quite a few of these books, it's like society is out to get you. That's not a message we want to spread, but that is the message that these books are sending.
Well, this dystopian society has failed.
Yeah,
Um,
big time.
and there are days that I look at my world and think,
Ugh.
so I'm in District 5. I wonder how we're going to do. You know, I mean, there are days that I think that. So maybe let's not dwell on it. But anyway, that having been said, or no, I'm not in 5. I'm in 8. I think I'm in 8.
Oh, I'm not in any district because I live in the UK.
Well,
I'm in disaster zone
I'm
at
in
the
the
moment.
I'm in the district that oh my gosh, Rue's from.
Yeah.
I think it's
To hear
8.
people talk, we're in a disaster zone right now. But anyway, that's
Yeah.
real life, and we're not here to talk about that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like, you know, the Hunger Games memes just have a lot that they speak to me these days. Anyway, moving along. I really, from the beginning, I was strangely enough, or maybe not so strangely, I was always Team PETA.
Yeah, so was I.
But I could have seen it going either way, and I wouldn't have been surprised if it had gone the other way as well. So this list is certainly not exhaustive. There are so many others that we could potentially discuss. Were there I think we've already answered sort of my questions. My questions were, which ones have you read, enjoyed, did you like, then leave? Like, say you like Princess Diaries, but you left it, right?
Yeah, I left it because I think 5 books was enough for me.
So that makes sense. And like, for me, obviously, I like Divergent, but then I noped out at the end of book 3 and didn't even go to the movies, right?
Which is fair enough. I
So,
think that, as we
yeah.
said, that everyone has their taste. It's kind of like we were talking earlier about the books from the 80s, and we didn't even touch on the fact that we had Judy Blume and Lois Duncan,
Yeah.
both of whom were, I mean, Judy Blume was probably the epitome of teenage girl novels. In fact, Forever was banned in our school because
What?
it was banned. It was considered too explicit because there was because Forever, I never read it. I was never a huge fan of Judy Blume. I was more a Lois Duncan girl.
Uh-huh.
But Judy Blume, I think Forever was about the first time.
Uh-huh.
So we weren't allowed it at school.
Oh, heaven forbid.
I know. But there were quite a few books that were in the locked cupboard at our school. And of course, Lois Duncan wrote I Know What You Did Last Summer,
Yeah.
which became a blockbuster movie. And that was the idea of a teenage romance at that time. Psychopathic killer going around paying back children who ran over somebody. I mean, it was very, very interesting times to live in.
Sure. Let's call it that.
Well, what else can you call it? It was the 80s.
Yeah.
It had very interesting fashion, interesting movies. I mean, it was the era of The Lost Boys and a lot of YA focused movies too. Mm-hmm. Because you had The Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Pretty in Pink, 16 Candles, all of the John Hughes films,
Right.
essentially. They were
Yeah.
all YA, but they were
All of the Brat Pack.
Yeah, all of the Brat Pack, but they were considerably more mature, I think,
They
than a
by the
YA
time you get to
film
St.
now.
Elmo's Fire, you've wandered into what we would call new adult today.
Yeah, I think so.
But those movies, interestingly enough, were, I think, pretty universally rated R. Right?
They were 15s here.
So they would have been at least like PG-13 here. But I want to say most of, like, I know St. Elmo's Fire was rated R.
Well, they were rated 15 here, all of them. However, I think that films are rated so much more different now than they were then. Because you look at I mean, they try and rate everything. Well, we have different ratings to the US as well. Ours go Universal, PG, 12, 12A, which is really PG now, 15 and 18. And 15s were and are films like Deadpool, and Logan, and
And
I'm trying
that's
to
rated
think.
R and R for us.
Yeah,
Restricted.
yeah, but that's 17 and up, isn't it, for you?
With a parent or guardian, you can go in.
Yeah, at 15 you can go in.
Yeah.
It's 15. 15 and over, you can go in. And then all of the MCU, the Marvel films, are 12As.
That's PG-13 here.
Yeah, and that's 12A is anyone over the age of 12 can go in on their own. 12 and under 12 can go in with a parent.
Yeah. That's
And then
PG-13.
of course you have You, which is universal, and that is pretty
G.
much everything. So
Yeah.
that is all your classic Disney films.
Yeah.
So Wreck-It Ralph and so on. So
That's
there is a big
G
difference.
or PG here would be your universal. G is just general audiences, so whoever wants to wander in, and then PG is like parental guidance suggested. So parents should probably show up and be like, "So, honey, you know."
Which is a 12A. Which is a 12A here.
No, it's more 12A for us is PG-13.
Yeah, 12 is PG-13. 12A is anyone to the age of 12 can go in with a parent.
Okay, I just don't understand. Okay.
I know we have different ratings. It used to be U, PG, 15 and 18. That used to be it. It was so easy. I used to go in and see a lot of the 15s because I'd just sneak in. I loved local cinemas.
Yeah, I walked in at age 12 into some R-rated films with no one even ever questioning me.
I went and saw Down and Out in Beverly Hills, which was a 15 because of language.
Yeah.
And I think I was 11.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, but there is a massive difference. I mean, Lois Duncan's I Know What You Did Last Summer, they made into a pretty gory schlock horror, maybe shock horror. That was a 15. That was a book written for teenagers. It was a YA novel, really.
It was.
So there is, I don't know. I think that they targeted them at teenagers, especially teenage girls, because of the romance element. So there was a pretty girl would find a handsome boyfriend. They go to the prom together. And that was pretty much it. And now books, they've changed so much for the YA audience. I mean, that's not saying that they don't appeal to everybody, because have you got all the Harry Potters on your bookshelf? I know I have.
Of course. And I'm in the process of buying them for my daughters. So, yeah.
And the Hunger Games, I've got those on my bookcase. I also have the entire, up to the book that never was published, Night World books by L.J. Smith, who also wrote the original books that the Vampire Diaries movie TV series was based on. And those were also teenage, and teenage books used to be much thinner.
Yeah,
they used to be about 150 to 175 pages or so.
Harry Potter blew that away.
Oh, yeah, especially with Order of the Phoenix.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking 800-page behemoth. I remember getting that at the midnight sale and just being like my eyes lighting up like, oh, yes, you know, that kind of thing. I was very excited.
That got delivered to my doorstep with a feather.
Oh, really?
Yeah, or postman. I think that I don't know if they were given some kind of marketing instruction or something. But when my book arrived, it was wrapped in twine and had a feather in it.
Oh, how sweet! No, I stood in line at Books A Million or whatever in Tennessee and got it. It was amazing. I stayed up. I had it delivered to Amazon. Yeah, I had. Yeah. Anyway, it was fun. I enjoyed it. So anyway, all right. Well, we have been at this for 45 minutes, which is maybe longer than we thought we were. But no, I think the overall thing here is YA has romance shot through it. I think even books that are not necessarily aimed at girls. And I think that just further reinforces our general theme that romance is everywhere, that romance is a part of the human condition, that love is part of the human condition, in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah. So that's my sort of final thought on YA. What do you think? Anything specific want to add to?
I think it's interesting how YA has morphed for me from books with girls on the cover all smiley and happy in awful fashion to books that have a sort of a tempered, they are measured through with romance. It's not the only message. That's not all that's out there. It's strong women who are fighting for whatever they're fighting for, in the case of Triss and Katniss, of course.
Their lives.
Yeah, exactly. They're fighting for their lives, but they're also fighting for independence and stability. They're looking for something, and it's a more positive message now, I think, than we had, and that was threaded through the Sweet Valley High, Sweet Dreams, First Love Harlequin books, and it's not a bad thing.
Absolutely. I would agree. Well, did we have anything else that we needed to say?
No, apart from don't forget that we're reading Karen Moning's The Dark Highlander.
Yes.
And we'll be discussing that next week.
Okay. That is my pick. And it is distinctly not YA. Hashtag sorry, not sorry. I don't know what else to say there.
No, we haven't picked a YA yet. We will.
Oh, we will.
At some point.
Yeah, we will. Good point. We will. I don't know when that will be, but we will definitely pick a YA to read. All right, y'all. Thank you for tuning in, and we will be back next week. Ray, how would you like to sign off?
Keep on searching for your happily ever after.
And I would remind you that romance isn't dead. It's alive and well on your bookshelves. Bye.
Bye.